It was Thomas Jefferson who said, "The Republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind."
Now, we hear a lot of talk today about right-wingers, left-wingers, extremists, and moderates. The political spectrum concept, if it has any meaning at all, is a measurement scale showing all the variations in government. Now, the extremists at the zero end would be those who advocate no government at all, the anarchists. The extremists at the other end would be those who advocate total government. And who are they? Well, the communists, of course, but also the Nazis, the fascists. No matter what they may call themselves, if they advocate total government control over the people, they are all, by definition, totalitarians. The debate is not between conservatives and liberals. It goes back in history long before those words were ever invented. The opposing points of view properly are identified as individualism versus collectivism. The individualist believes that the rights of the individual must not be obliterated by the desires of the collective or the group. The collectivist, on the other hand, believes that the group is more important than the single person within it, and that the individual must be sacrificed if necessary for the greater good of the greater number. The individualists believe that every man has a personal and direct responsibility to provide first for himself, next for his family, and then for those outside his family who may be in need. The collectivist, on the other hand, declares that the individual is not personally responsible for charity, for raising his own children, providing for his aging parents, or even providing for himself, for that matter. This is a group function of the state, of government itself.
Everything we talk about, socialism, communism, globalism, and Nazism, guess what? It's all collective society.
Collectivism on an international level is essentially known as globalism, which is often promoted as a framework for unity and sustainability. Under the guise of philanthropy, the leaders of the globalist movement leverage every possible crisis to advance their plan to replace national sovereignty with a one-world government.
We are confronted with so many crises simultaneously. What does it need to master the future?
It is the globalists who are behind the destructive new methods of control, like ESG, the acronym for Environmental, Social, Governance. Similar to China's social credit score, ESG is a ranking system that tracks a company or country's carbon footprint, as well as its commitment to diversity and inclusion. A low ESG score can lead to severe consequences, including reputational damage, legal and regulatory actions, and loss of investors and bank credit lines. Within the last decade, numerous nations and thousands of major brands have been coerced to adapt to the ESG program, and today, many of them are paying the price. In 2018, the World Economic Forum published an article on its website entitled, "How We Will Make Sri Lanka Rich by 2025. That article was removed once it became known that food prices in Sri Lanka had nearly doubled and that millions of their citizens were facing starvation.
Now, what caused this? Farmers protested and asked the government to work with them on slowly improving farming practices to be more environmentally friendly rather than implementing harsh bans. But the government was more interested in maintaining a high ESG score with its creditors like BlackRock. As a result, food production dropped drastically, with farmers expecting crop losses of 85%. The country had to begin spending money on importing food when it was previously self-sufficient. Sri Lanka is a cautionary tale. What's happening there could be a foreshadowing of what's in store for us if we don't take heed and learn some lessons.
The Dutch government was one of the first to sign on to the ESG system. Dutch farmers pleaded that the rush to adapt to extreme new regulations would result in the destruction of the country's food supply. The Netherlands is the second largest agriculture exporter in the world, earning the title of the tiny country that feeds the world. A collapse of their system could trigger a global food crisis. Yet, the Netherlands Prime Minister continued to persecute Dutch farmers until they were forced to revolt.
Where do you find still such a prime minister in the world? You find it in the Netherlands, and it's Mark Rutte.
And remember, too, the Netherlands is the pilot program of the World Food Hubs, and the World Economic Forum has assigned to the Netherlands what they call this Global Secretariat, using, ironically, a communist term for it.
Klaus Schwab's golden pin-up boy, Prime Minister Mark Rutte, is busy fulfilling the agenda of the World Economic Forum's Great Reset by turfing farmers off their own land.
Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned in my years as Prime Minister of one of the world's most outward-looking trading countries is that national interests are often best served by international cooperation.
Schwab has sold this idea because they're up against the wall. Okay, you have all these governments that are basically broke. So what will happen is if they defaulted, then all the people have lost their pensions, they've counted on it, and they're going to be storming their palaces with pitchforks. Schwab has sold the idea that, well, we go towards Marxism and you can still retain power.
None of these net zero climate schemes work without massively disrupting or even destroying the lives of the little people.
If you think about what created wealthy people wealthy throughout the many years of our human history, was the ownership of land. And you have governments right now that are looking to take ownership of real estate, and it's happening everywhere. And you have this movement of individuals kind of going like, hey, like, people should never profit off of real estate. And unfortunately, that ideology is what the government is using to take control.
If we look at data from 2001 to 2015, there is a slow and steady trend towards more corporations owning single-family homes, apartments, office spaces, and less individuals actually owning real estate. Blackstone Group actually recently raised a record of $50 billion to take homes from American families.
During the pandemic, when all people were ordered to lock down indoors, why did governments around the world make exceptions for mass protests? We've all heard the term fire sale. In this case, it's not a metaphor. When a community is damaged by protests, the value of local properties plummet. Investors then gobble up the devalued real estate for pennies on the dollar. In many cases, the leaders of the decimated communities receive kickbacks for allowing this transfer of wealth.
Big companies and investment firms swooping in and buying up some of the only affordable homes in your neighborhood.
The more you have individuals not own their own home, the more you have individuals not financially independent, creates more dependence on big financial corporations that profit off of mass people. So we are going towards a world where the people are owning nothing. I always say, like, if we don't own anything, well, who does?
Bill Gates, business magnate, software developer, philanthropist, nation's largest farmland owner. Gates owns nearly 270,000.
It's a reinstitution of Marxism where, communism owned all the property.
In his Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx wrote, "The theory of communism may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property." Karl Marx was a German philosopher and social theorist who lived in the 1800s. He is the co-author of the Communist Manifesto, which has been referred to as the Bible of Communism. His theories of class conflict and dialectical materialism were instrumental in shaping socialist and communist movements worldwide. Joseph Stalin, Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, Mao Zedong, Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, Kim Jong-un, Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro, and many other communist revolutionaries have cited Marxism as the foundation of their political ideologies. Marx rejected all concepts of God, as well as the traditional family. According to members of his own family, Marx was emotionally, verbally, and physically abusive. His wife, Jenny, was plagued by depression, which was compounded by Karl's adulterous impulses and his inability to provide for his children. Despite his privileged upbringing and formal education, Karl Marx was often unwilling to work and instead relied on the financial support of friends and family.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, "When certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind."
The founding fathers were racist, misogynist,
fascist political party, radicals on the far right,
anti-Semitic,
xenophobic,
transphobic,
Uncle Tom's
white supremacist,
domestic terrorist,
neo-Nazi organizer,
Nazis.
You are an anti-vaxxer,
Anti-vaxxers,
Racist,
racist,
a racist.